Okay. We cannot officially start because there is 2 minutes left. Oh, we're going to start, right? Yeah. We'll start a minute early and maybe we'll leave a minute early. How about that? The main idea for today is to work as a final exam review. If you haven't submitted stuff, right, today is the deadline. Okay, if you need like another day or something like that, shoot me an email, but if not, right, I'm gonna grade and I'm planning to post probably on Wednesday my solutions to all the assignments so that you can study. And once I post them, then I will not take anything else that you submit. Does that make sense? So make sure to submit everything, check, email, double check, triple check, right? Okay. What did we learn? Let me start that way, which is cool. What did we learn and what's in the exam? Which are not necessarily the same things, but first thing we learned was variables and functions, right? You should know all that stuff. By now, that should be obscenely easy, right? We learned how to write full programs, and all this setup is not on the exam, right? I mean, hopefully you learned it and you're using Eclipse or some other IDE, you're using Gradle, that kind of stuff, right? We did learn conditionals and recursion. Given that we kind of stopped using recursion, I can almost guarantee you that I'll put something on the final, just so you know. The final is comprehensive. It covers everything, right? A lot of the other stuff gets covered by the newer stuff. In a way, by asking you to create objects, you're going to be using variables, right? By asking you to do stuff with arrays, you're going to be using loops. So I don't really need to test those things, but recursion is not necessarily covered in the other stuff, so I'll almost guarantee you to ask you one.
Guaranteed to ask
a question using recursion.
Okay, gotcha.
And you should go over the midterm and the midterm review and kind of make sure that you also know all that stuff. For the most part, you do already anyway. We did loops, and loops we kept using forever, right? We learned about how to use objects, and loops was the last stuff on the midterm. Then we learned how to use objects, how to create classes. Then we learned about arrays. Then inheritance and interfaces, which is very related to classes, right? It's kind of part 2 of that stuff, but we needed to combine it with arrays. Then we learned collections and generics, which is the same thing as arrays. It's not the same thing, but it's the same thing, right? So all those things, although it looks like a lot of topics, they are in a way 2 topics. Objects and arrays or collections in general. Does that make sense? Then we did talk about exceptions and input-output from files. I will not ask you any questions about file input-output, but I will ask you questions about exceptions. And then we talked about unit testing and JUnit, and I will not ask you anything about that stuff. That is just useful. Yeah, unit testing and Gradle and Git are those things that I don't put them in the test or anything like that. They're not official topics, but chances are that those are going to be about as useful as all the rest of the stuff that you learned. So when you apply for a job, the fact that you have used Git, even in a basic level, is an advantage over anybody else, right? And it's probably a very good idea to create your own repository, make it public in Bitbucket or GitHub, and put your stuff in there. And that's going to be useful when you're applying for jobs. Hopefully. Who knows? All of that stuff, who knows when you're applying for jobs what actually happens? But I was talking to an alumni a couple of days ago, and he was like, oh, you know what? That Git and actually using the command line, it's gotten me a couple of the jobs that I got, and everybody was. It's been one of the most useful things. So. But no, we use it all the time at work, so I'm assuming that it's also useful to you guys, but I don't make any promises about jobs. Okay, so let's create something so we can start.
Just curious, can you install Git without actually installing anything on the computer, or I guess if you don't have administrator privileges, can you install Git?
Probably you can if you're using Windows.
Yeah.
I
can't download and install anything, and it's not worth submitting a ticket for. But I'd like to have it on my.
If you're using Windows, chances are, and this is if you're using the Mac, then you can, because most of the apps actually come as just one zip file. They don't call them zip files; they call them something else. But that's basically it. So on the Mac, you just copy the file, and that's you just copy the folder, and that's the thing. On Linux, you can usually find the magical incantations to tell it to install packages on a folder rather than on globally. On Windows, there is, thank goodness, people that do portable apps. And it is mildly sucky still, but it used to be great. There is still a way that you can do those things. Now they try to install, but there are ways that you can download oodles and oodles of portable things. You can actually put them on a USB or something like that and run them from a USB. It is amazing how many things are there that are portable. It's been a while since I have had a machine that sucks. All the Windows boxes at work and at home, I have admin privileges, so I don't care. But
we just have folders and folders of version 1, version 2, version 3. It's just like ridiculous.
Yeah, chances are.
I can probably look it up later.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, or Google portable Git or something like that, and people tend to do them. Also, MobiXterm may have it. Mobi is a Unixy thing that's portable. So it's kind of like Cygwin, but portable. If you're ever in that situation, it makes Windows almost usable. We are getting to the point where Windows will have Bash by default.
Yeah, I saw that.
Woohoo! I haven't tried it. But anyway.
I got all excited about PowerShell. I wrote some scripts and then went to work and I can't use them.
PowerShell is incredibly nice, except that it has changed so much. PowerShell 3 is very, very nice, but it's not on every computer, and that makes it sucky.
Yeah.
It's like how you have to bug your sysadmin to install a decent version of PowerShell, which is a pain. But anyway, let's try to do this. And we'll do round robin, right? Write a class called fraction with the following methods and constructor. Constructor takes two int parameters, the numerator and denominator, and of course we need those fields. A method called getNumerator that returns an int, the numerator. A method called getDenominator that returns an int, the denominator, and a method called toDouble that returns a double to equivalent decimal to the fraction. What works best? We'll give you guys 5 minutes to do it, and then we do it together. Let me do this. Yeah. That way I get. Okay. Ah. Huh. I am not sure of what is being recorded now. What is it recording? Oh, so beautiful. It records both sides of the screen. Maybe. Is it? Yeah. Cool. Hopefully it figured it out. Okay. Shall we start playing? Move here. Oh, move all the way here. Yeah. Okay, I cannot see a thing, but that's cool. I need to create a class fraction. Oh, I can see it this way. And it needed, what did it need? Numerator and denominator, right? What happened? If I do this, perfect. Numerator, denominator, right? As fields, as constructor, and get numerator and get denominator, right? And then two double. Where are you, mouse? God, this is confusing. It is cool. Okay, so int numerator denominator, right? you want it to be fancy, you could do it private or something like that, right? Just be fancy. Public fraction. We don't really need to use this most of the time, but I like to do my constructors like this. Have the same name for the parameter, and so I need to use this. This is the instance variable, so this is this guy, and then this is the parameter, which is this guy. I think I know. Maybe. This is driving me nuts. Okay, how I can probably do this. That's the constructor, same name as the class, right? Then we need public int get numerator, parameters, numerator. And here we don't need to put this, we can. If you don't complain, we don't put it, right? And then public double to double. And we need to cast the denominator to a double. If not, it will do integer addition, integer division. You guys ended up with something like this? Reasonably close?
Is it wrong if we cast both numerator and denominator to double?
No.
Is it okay if we include static in our get methods?
No, your get methods should not be static.
Okay.
What does static means?
Just within the class?
Belongs to the class, not to the instance, right? So in fact, you can't have, they cannot be static. Because numerator is not part of the class, it's part of each instance. Does that make sense? Basically, you cannot use this in a static method. And all of these are using them explicitly or implicitly. So you cannot.
What if we said public class fraction?
That would be perfectly okay. Those, you could say public class fraction or public static class fraction. That wouldn't matter. Because that depends on context, and you are not given context, right? It would be perfectly okay to put it, oops, and actually I messed up. We cannot, actually we can. We can put classes within classes, yeah. Sorry. But that would depend on if it's the main class in the file, right? If it's the class name fraction.java, then you would do public class fraction. But I'm not telling you that stuff, right? So that wouldn't matter. Cool. So you guys know how to do classes, right? You can do them with one hand tied to your back. Given the following interface product, public string, get name, get type, string get name, string get type, and double get price. Create a class book that implements the product interface. It should return book for get type and have a constructor taking the other two fields. So let me copy this guy. And maybe get one of you to come do this. Who's going to volunteer or be volunteered? Actually, this work. Yeah. That's cool. Let's try it. What would we do? How do we declare a class? What keyword do we use? Class, yeah! And what's the name of the class? Book, right? How do we declare that we are implementing that interface product? Implements, right? We want a constructor that takes get name and price, right? So we are going to have string name double price, constructor public book what do we do here?
This dot.
Right? Public string get name. What do we return for get type? Book. And then get price, right? Something like this, right?
Yeah.
You can also break your neck. It's probably easier to move.
A lot more.
Sorry, I'm still all confused because my screen is actually displaying something else. So, but this is less words than trying to do it backwards. This makes sense. You should be able, truly, right? You should be able to define classes like it's incredibly easy. Because it is incredibly easy, right? Now, write a Java code fragment to create a variable called b1 of type book and assign it to a book instance with name catch22 and price $7.95. So what would that look like? How do we declare variables? We write first the type, then the name, right? What type do we want?
Book.
Book. B1 equals new book. We cannot instantiate product. Product is the interface, book is the class, right? New book of, and hopefully catch22. Oops.
It slid up on you.
Labs. This is a lot easier on a computer than on paper. Then I think it was $7.95, right? Although it's probably called cut and paste because people used to actually cut and paste on paper,
It's flawless time.
which we probably did in kindergarten. Maybe. So that is cool, right? And you should be able to create objects like there's no tomorrow. Given the product interface above, write a function called average price that takes an array of product and returns a double the average price of the product. Let me actually cut and paste it. So we can So how do we write that? How do we write a function or method? What do we write first?
Public.
Okay, in this case, public static would probably make sense, right? And then what do we write after that?
No, I'm good.
Double, right? What else? The name of the function, right? What parameter does it take? Oops, it was average price with a capital A because I'm an idiot. The standard thing would have lowercase a. But my spec said capital A, which means you should do capital A. Of course, in an exam, I would not even know this when I'm grading. But what's the parameter? Oops, and
2 products.
what does it take?
Oh, product array.
A product array. So what do we do? How do we specify that? How do we write that in Java?
Square brackets.
Is this, right? And what do we want to call it? Products.
Products.
How do we calculate the average of something? Add the elements and divide, right? So we can do double sum equals 0. And by now you should be able to do these things kind of in your sleep. What do we add? P dot get price. Why is this thing complaining? Really complaining? Oh, it's not a double. I am an idiot. That's perfectly okay. Product, right? Makes sense. You can also write the other kind of for loop if it makes you happier. Right?
Explain a little more of the return sum divided by, I know products dot length is the array, the length of the array. So,
How do you calculate the average of something, the mean of
Oh, yeah.
something?
by adding it and dividing it by the,
Add up all the elements,
Number.
divide by the number of elements.
yeah, got it, okay.
Given the product interface above, write a function called highest price product that takes a list of products and returns a product with the highest price. So what do we do? Actually, probably do this and get space. It's a function or method, right? So let's do public. Static. What do we return? And what do we take?
Product array.
No.
That's
Almost the same thing, right? But not the same thing, right? So what's the algorithm? We start with something, right? And we iterate over every element, and if it's less than the one that we have, we keep making, actually if it's more, right? We're trying to calculate the max, right? So, product, let's do it high. What do we start it with? Not zero, right? Well, what are we storing, the product or the price? We can store the product, right? So we would start with what? The product at 0, right? It needs to be a product. We could have null and then have an if for null, but let me do this stuff. Oops, cancel. Is it Control Alt Enter? Oops. Okay. So now it will stop bugging me about it. It will. What would happen if the list is empty?
Would return null.
No, we would actually break because when we do .get0, it generates an exception. However, the spec doesn't say what the heck do we do when the list is empty,
Okay.
right? So it's my fault. It's the wrong spec. Normally you would figure out, well, what do I want to do? Do I return null? Do I raise an exception? What do I do? Since I don't tell you, then what do you do? Whatever the heck is easier, right? It's my fault.
So it makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's the easiest.
Yes. Now, what do we do? For product P in products, what do we want to do?
If the next element is higher than that element, switch.
If this current element, right, is higher than the one that I have, right? If it's higher than high. So what's the current element? What am I calling it in this loop? T, right? T dot get price is higher than, what am I calling my max? High dot price. And that's it. I'm officially evil and terribly wasteful because I'm comparing with the very first element again, and I don't need to, right? Because I started with that one. But on the other hand, that lets me use the nice loop rather than use integers. So I like it better. I'm wasteful. You should be able to do arrays and vectors and array lists and those things without thinking too much, right? This is almost the most complex thing we did, right? Because you're dealing with lists of objects, right? It's kind of two levels of abstraction. Three, if you think about you're using an interface rather than a class. And you should know how to do sum and max and min and those kinds of things with arrays, right? We did about 700 of them. Now, let's do exceptions. Java has an integer class with a static method parseInt. Takes a string, returns an int. This function throws a number format exception if the string does not represent a valid int. Right? A static function called parseInt, which takes two arguments, a string and an int. The int represents the default value and returns an int. This function calls integer.parseInt and handles the exception so that if parseInt raises a number format exception, the function would return the default value. Does that make sense? reasonable sense? Yes. So what do? Static int parse int, and we take two parameters, right? String in int default. Var. I don't think we can use default because it's a reserved keyword, right? What do? We are gonna try to do this, right? That's what we are trying to do, but what's the problem? That could throw an exception, right? So we need to handle that exception. How do we handle exceptions? We do what? Try and catch, right? So we put this inside a try and catch block. You could do this. And then you could also do, since I'm telling you explicitly that it's a number format exception, you can do number format exception. What do we do if we catch that exception? What should we return if that guy couldn't parse that thing? Yep. Does this make sense?
Can you explain the catch number format exception? Is that just?
When you do catch, you can actually have several catch blocks. So you could say catch number format exception, do this, and this will only catch a number format exception or a subclass of number format exception. It will not catch any other things. If you do exception, it will catch every subclass of exception. And number format exception is a subclass of exception.
So basically what exceptions are doing, or try and catch is doing, is if you get some sort of error, instead of outputting the default error or just breaking it, it gives them something.
The thing is that this could be several levels deep. Your try catch, right, may call a method that calls another method that calls another method, and the exception is raised 7 levels inside rather than 1. Right? Integer.parseInt may be calling something else, and that something else raises the exception.
May have an exception, yeah. And
So
you don't want that exception coming to the top, I guess.
what you want is that exception coming to the top. So because the guys inside don't know, right? If I'm parse int, what the heck do you want me to do if you give me ABC and you tell me to interpret that as an int, right? I just have to tell you blah. There is nothing, I don't know what you want. Outside, you may want a default value. Or you may want to have a nice message to the user that says, please enter an integer, and implies you idiot, but doesn't say it, right? It's usually not a good idea to put those messages. Right? So you don't know. So all you can do is raise an exception and hope that somebody above you catches it. And then they will know, depending on the semantic, what's going on.
So when the next person tries to implement this class, they see it in their compiler, I guess, or when they run the program and they have to handle it.
Yes. If you declare that you throw an exception, then the compiler will verify that you handle it somehow. So, except for runtime exceptions, and so actually number format exceptions are runtime exceptions, so you don't have to handle it. Given the fraction class you created above, write the static create fraction method that takes two integers, the numerator and denominator, and returns a fraction with that numerator and denominator. However, if the denominator is 0, the function will throw an illegal argument exception. So now it's reversed. Now we need to throw stuff, right? So we need a static method called create fraction that takes two integers and returns a fraction, right? We need to declare, or we should declare, still need to import it. No, F is good. What we want to do is return, how do we create a fraction? Do oops. Let's eliminate the static. We needed to do fraction static, something like that. I think if we do static fraction, that would work. That's the kind of stuff that you don't have to worry about in the exam, right? Now, before that, we want to check, right? And so if the denominator is 0, we want to throw an exception, right? How do we throw an exception? What's the keyword? Throw. Throws when you declare that you're throwing it, throw when you're throwing it. New Let's do more fun stuff with maths. Write a function called array frequencies that takes a list of strings and returns a map of string to integer, right? Because we can't use primitives; they have to be objects. The function maps every string in the array to its frequency. So array frequencies. we need to create, right? Map is an integer, map is an interface, so we need to create a class, and so that's hatch map is the obvious one. This is complaining because it doesn't know import hatch map. What's our algorithm? What do we do in the middle?
Put.
Okay, we want to be doing stuff like what? We want to go through every string, right? And what do we want to put? We want to do what do we want to put? That string, so word, and what value do we want? Whatever we had, and what else? If we already had it twice, how many times do we want it? Right? If that map already had a value of 2 for that word, what value do we want to put in instead? 3, right? So we want to do, how do we get the value for that word in the map? What would we do? Yes. Yeah. Right? It would almost work. What's the problem? That's the almost part. If it isn't there, right, then it's going to crash, right? So what can we do? Well, let's check. How do we check whether something is there? Well, yeah. You could use get and it returns null. If it's not there, what do we do? No, because the first time we see the word isn't there, right?
Oh, yeah. We added,
We add it with what value?
0.
There is, yeah. This is the kind of hackish way is to do frequencies. We can put the value 0 and then do the thing below and add 1 to it, right? Or we could have an else. But then we add the value 1. Does this make sense? And these are probably the more difficult questions. That's why I put them at the end, just because we didn't do as many with maps. Right? You should be able to do stuff with arrays without thinking, because we did 700 of those things, right? With maps, we only did 10. So. This makes sense? Any questions? Now, this is kind of a very standard kind of algorithm to do with maps or to do with finding frequencies and things like that. The last one, write a function called most common word. It takes a list of strings and returns the string which occurs more frequently in the list. You can assume the array contains no null values. Well, we called the other function, right? Gives us a map, and then we just need to do max. Right? So we are gonna do we're gonna return a string, and our thing is called most common word. And then we need to iterate through that map, right? What can we initialize with? What's our lowest frequency possible?
Lowest possible.
Do we have a lowest possible frequency? 1, right? Because you cannot have negatives. So we could even do 0, right? So int high frequency equals 0, and string high equals, let me start with this, right? 0 is actually lowest than the lowest. Our lowest is 1, so the first one we see will beat this guy, right? And then if it's empty, what do we do? Well, the spec doesn't say, so we can do whatever. If it's empty, we'll return the empty string. You didn't tell me what the heck to do, right? Now, how do we iterate through all the entries in a map? We can do several things. One of them is called get keys, and that gets us all the keys, and use get to get the values, right? The other possibility is to use get entries, and that lets us iterate over, sorry, not get entries, entry set. So we have get keys and get values, and then entry set. Shall we do entry set? Or map dot entry of string maybe it's key set rather than get keys or something like that. But entry in frequencies dot entry set. if and an entry has get key and get value. Key is greater than high frequency, and we are gonna make high frequency equals entry get. Why are you complaining, Thingy? What? What's it telling me? Oh, string and in, sorry. Oh, this is not key. This is get value. I have them confused. Value is the frequency. Any questions? Any answers? You should be able to hopefully come up with more questions to practice for the exam, right? Kind of variations on a theme. Think about it, we didn't see it's a lot and not a lot at the same time. Like, yeah, now do it with arrays, right? And we didn't see that many things you can do with an array. You could do stuff like binary search and things like that. Shall we redo binary search just for fun? We did not see any sorting algorithms. There was no way to add that. But we did cover binary search at least, right? We covered the person. Any other things that we want to play with for 10 minutes? We leave 10 whole minutes early. Isn't that cool?
Is there anything like that on coding that you can use for this?
I will try to find some good ones, but usually coding back kind of ends at the very early stuff. Yeah. Unfortunately. I will try to see if I can find or make some good ones.
So we need to review the midterm review.
Just in case.
Okay.
Chances are, hopefully, right? When you review the midterm review, you'll start laughing maniacally because it should be incredibly easy by now, right? The maniacally part is like, oh God, why didn't I get 105? But oh well. You should see how far you have come. And it should be incredibly easy, hopefully.
And then go through this review and possibly maybe mess with it in Eclipse and
Mess with it in Eclipse, or actually just go through the assignments, right? I tend to do somewhat kind of one level below the assignments, right? On the one hand, by now you have done all the assignments, so you're probably better than you were when we were doing assignment 5 or something like that, right? But on the other hand, for the assignments, you have an infinite amount of time, or a very large amount of time, and a compiler, right? And unit tests, so you can see whether it works or not. Whereas on the exam, you have a piece of paper. And so it's a lot easier to mess up on the exam. Right? So I try to not make things that are too complicated. It's kind of, can you do what we learn, kind of the simpler, one level below what we learn, in a way, right? So on the assignments, we're doing classes that have collections and things like that, right? We're doing a class that contains a map of another class, right? We were doing the review info class, right? The game info class contains at least an array of reviews, and then the other class, I cannot even remember what its name was, contains a map of strings to that thing, right? So you're really thinking about a map of strings to a class that contains an array. So that's mildly interesting. And so this is kind of one level of abstraction less.
so maybe going through those assignments like 9 and
Yes,
7.
absolutely. The assignments, yeah. And also, if you think about it, most of this stuff is classes and arrays, right? And the assignments required you to. There was one, right, where you had to do the squares and rectangles, and so you defined a bunch of different classes, right? And it may not be a bad idea, depending on time, to come up with your own thing, right? Okay, come up with your own product classes, right? And do the same kind of thing with products, or come up with cars and add up the number of wheels on a vehicle, right? Get a vehicle, get the number of wheels, and create some cars and motorcycles, and add up the number of wheels, or get the average number of wheels. It's the exact same algorithm, but right, that kind of stuff.
So we come here next Monday?
We come here next Monday. Correct me if I'm wrong. I was just looking at it before, and it's at 6 o'clock, 6 to 8.
That's our test.
Yes,
6 to 8.
6 to 8 next Monday. And that will be it. Isn't it amazing?
So don't show up at 6:30.
Don't show up at 6:30.
I did that for a differential equations exam. Because the class was like at 5:30 and then the exam was at 5 and I showed up at 5:30.
Don't do that if you can
It's all
avoid
right.
it.
You didn't need that extra
I
time.
know, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, I was so mad at that. That's why they did that to trick us, like, so 30 minutes early.
If you could think of anything else, I'm still more or less available for the whole week. Shoot me an email, Skype me, call me. Hopefully the class was enjoyable, and hopefully you learned stuff. And hopefully sometime soon you get a job using this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll see. You still kind of are at the very beginning of the journey, but once you take data structures, you'll be okay. And once you finish data structures, you'll laugh and say, how easy was this stuff? It has been a pleasure. I'll see you guys in a week. You go turn, well, let me turn this stuff up first, this way.
Data structures kind of bug you about
Yes, one sec. Let me,
that. Okay.
this guy, and stop this thingy.